So now that Libby's gone through the reproducible workflow tutorial, we're going to transition over to our accessing NEON data tutorial, which is going to be led by Ryan McClure, and is going to focus on what NEON data is and how you might access that in the context of the forecasting challenge.
Cool. Thank you, Whitney. And hello, everyone. It's exciting to see so many participants today. This is really exciting. And I'm really excited to kind of show everyone how we can all quickly access NEON data and both integrate this into a forecasting framework, but also if you have your own independent research that's not related to forecasting, this tool can also be applied in that context as well. So yeah, so with that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Ryan McClure. I'm a postdoc at Virginia Tech. I work with Dr. Quinn Thomas and Dr. Caitlin Carey. And so today we're going to be talking about accessing NEON data, but I'd also like to give a shout out to all of the entire ecological forecasting community. Everything that I'm going to be presenting on today is a team effort in which everyone has all contributed to making this data accessibility possible. So let's see. So I'm going to give a brief kind of history about what NEON is and how the data of NEON came to be. And so the mission statement for NEON is that it's a continental scale observation facility operated by Battelle and designed to collect long-term open access ecological data to better understand how US ecosystems are changing. Now, Dr. Quinn Thomas highlighted earlier that the NEON encompasses roughly 81 terrestrial and aquatic sites across the contiguous United States. This does range from Alaska to Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and also across multiple domains and ecosystems, along this gradient. So, but NEON has a long history. In fact, the first idea of NEON started in roughly 2000, where they had this idea of adopting a framework like the LTER network and having open access data portal that ecologists could use. So the plan actually started to congeal and get into place roughly in 2006. But as we all know, with funding in science, not everything happens immediately. So it wasn't until 2011 until Congress actually approved funding to start implementing and building NEON sites across the United States. So again, as mentioned, from between 2011 and 2020, they've been working, it's gone through its ups and downs. We know this with NEON, but to date, there's these 81 sites in which there's open access data for ecologists to explore and conduct scientific research. So what I'm going to be highlighting quickly is a unique novel package called NEON Store. For those of you who might have explored NEON data in the past, you might have used another package called NEON Utilities, which is also a really useful package. But NEON Store stands out in a few unique ways compared to NEON Utilities that's really amendable for forecasting. So NEON Store provides high-level interfacing for downloading and storing NEON products really repeatedly and quickly. And I think the most powerful aspect of this package is that it avoids repeat downloading. So if you've used NEON Utilities, you say download data from, say, Harvard Forest for a certain amount of time, and then you re-download it, it re-downloads all those data. NEON Store is powerful in that it recognizes, hey, this previous data was downloaded, I don't need to download it again. So we're going to be highlighting and using that in an R script in just a little bit. So how do we actually get to NEON data? The first and foremost is we need to get to the NEON data portal. So if you haven't been on this portal before, this is the link to the site. And I think I can quickly put it in the chat. It's also easy to type in data.neonscience.org. So we can copy this. And if we just open up, you can see that we have the NEON data portal. Okay, so on the NEON data portal, there's some history, all the different data and samples, different field sites. So you have the option to explore different data products, look at the quality of said data, how to work with those data, etc. You can also see that same map that I've essentially copied into the slide earlier. But so for the challenge today, I believe we're looking at phenology, and one of the drivers of phenology is growing degree day. And in order to calculate growing degree day, we need what we know as air temperature. And across these 81 sites, there are eddy flux towers that are measuring air temperature at both 1 minute and 30-minute resolution. So something that we can do is we can actually check temperature, and then it kind of opens up a new window in which we have all the different types of Neon data products that are related to temperature. So here you can see IR biological temperature, triple aspirated air temperature, etc. Also, on this left side, you can see our search term, but there's various other filters that we can apply to our search. So you can see some data that are available, potential data that are coming soon, different types of visualizations, how the data were collected. And importantly, we also have different sites. So you can see here, this encompasses all of the 81 different Neon sites. And you can see how each of these sites corresponds with a 4-letter code. And you can see here, I have selected HARV, which stands for the Harvard Forest. And so just remember, we want to keep that HARV in our memory. And when I click on HARV, this is all of the temperature related data for Harvard. Now to calculate the growing degree day, which is used for the phenology challenge, we're using the single aspirated air temperature. So if I click on this link, it brings up the air temperature. And the next thing we want to keep in mind that's useful is this product ID. And this product ID is right here. It's this DP1000002.001. And so when we then transition to R to download this data, we really want to remember our HARV and this product ID right here. Okay, so I will now transition into R. And first and foremost, I want to recognize that I'm going to be moving through this R script quickly enough that I'm able to get it all downloaded and you can see the entire process. If you have any questions about the downloading or accessibility, you can definitely go to the GitHub and also clone it yourself because you know how to do that now and run this on your own. So first and foremost, we want to get the Phenocam data. And it's important to highlight that this is going to be a slight tangent and that the Phenocam data are actually through University of New Hampshire and not necessarily a true Neon data product. And so I'm just going to quickly run this code and you can see Neon Harvard DP1000033. And what this is doing is pulling all of the Phenocam data and downloading it and storing it as a data product. And so this will probably take just a minute or so. And then once we get that, we'll step into downloading the Neon data directly. Okay, there we go. Completed downloading and generated phenology targets. And you can see here, if we look in O1 Neon data access, we click on data, we have a CSV file here that's phenology targets. And if you're interested to look at those, how those data are come together in more detail, there's in the download functions folder in scripts, there's a download Phenocam and quantify uncertainty. Those are also available on the Eco Forecast Phenology Challenge GitHub site as well. So now we actually want to start downloading some Neon temperature data. And so if you remember, I mentioned we want two things we really wanted to remember. The first is that 4-letter code. In here, this is HARV, which is Harvard, and this is going to correspond with our site. And then we want to remember that product ID. So we have our site HARV, and we have our product set. So now what Neon Store is going to do is we need to build a database or a location on our computer in which we want to store all these massive amounts of CSV files that come from Neon. And so this is a Neon Store database, and you can see here that I have stored it in Neon Store Data Access, Data, and Neon Store, and you can see this folder right here. So I want to set both the database and my Neon Store home, and then to check to make sure that I'm working in the correct directory, I can use this function in Neon Store, which is neon dir, Neon directory. And then it shows this is where all of my Neon data are going to be stored. So now to get all of this Neon data for Harvard, for the Harvard Forest, we want to get all the air temperature. It's simply this line of code right here. So you can see Neon download, we have our product, which is our data product ID, our site ID Harvard. And if we run this line of code here, it is going to first and foremost access the API of Neon. And then once it does this, boom. So now it's this line here comparing hashes against local file index, and it's omitting the 949 files that were previously downloaded. And what this means is that Neon Store accessed the API, recognized, hey, I have 949 files that are the same compared to what's on my computer. I don't need to download those. But then it recognized, hey, there are maybe 10 more files on there that I need to access and download. So this is what this downloading is here. So then it updates it. And so now if I try to run this again, it will again access the API. It will take about 6 to 7 seconds or a little longer. And now it will say comparing hashes against local index, omitting the 595 files previously downloaded, and it didn't download any more data. So, but now we have, say we have this Neon Store, we have our data product here in the Neon Store, and here's our Harvard site. And then we see we have a bunch of different folders that corresponds with year and month. We click in that, and we have a slew of different CSV files. So if we look at this, you can see we have, boom, direct air temperature data. But it's important to note there is some data missing, right? Not all Neon data are perfect. But then the big question is, how do we get from those downloaded data to an actual table in our computer? And so a useful function of this is called the Neon index function, in which it creates a table of all your tables. And so I run table of data for Neon index, and it can show all the different types of tables that correspond that's been downloaded in. And the table that we're interested in, if we scroll down, we have single aspirated air temperature for 30-minute basic. And this is the one that we want to work with. Because one minute resolution temperature is just a lot of data. So we can then run this function called Neon Store. And this is what's kind of pulling that data in and generating a database that we can access all these tables and create a nice data table for our end data product. So then eventually we run, the last function is this Neon table, where we have that corresponding table name here in the table of data. And then we also pull it for our site Harvard. And in doing so, we then run this function and we look at, growing degree days. And now we can see that we have generated a data frame where we have growing degree days with a corresponding day. So that's wonderful, but it's also important to highlight that this is all raw data. This is raw Neon data. And if you've worked with Neon data in the past, you might have noticed that there are some gaps, okay? Now this is up to you how you fill the gaps. So in this example, for growing degree days, I look at, there's about 12 or 13 NAs or missing data points here. So I run a quick imputation algorithm called Amelia. You can use other imputations to fill in these missing data gaps. And so I can quickly run an imputation type of algorithm. And then in doing so, I can fill in some missing data points. So if I look at this and zoom, black is denoting actual observations, and then red is denoting imputed data. So again, now we have a QA/QC, truly QA/QC driver, growing degree day data that can now feed into our models. Lastly, in the essence of time, this is also provided on GitHub. And a huge shout out to a fellow postdoc at Virginia Tech that works with me. His name's Tagmore. He actually has developed a quick, awesome Shiny app in which you're able to quickly visualize any data or any data or tables that you have saved on your computer. So for example here, if I want to look at the, say the phenology target data that's used in this challenge, I can quickly open this. And then you have this real nice kind of click point. So kind of point and go style here. So we can do our X variable of time. We can look at the greenness index here. But then we can also add a third layer where we can also look at the different types of standard deviation for those days, right? So you can look for potential outliers and quickly visualize data that might not match or something to kind of keep in note as you move along. So with that, I want to try and keep it right around 15 minutes. So again, yeah, feel free to submit some questions. That's a lot of R code really quickly. But please feel free to reach out at any time, and yeah, I'll try to answer questions as best as I can.
Thanks so much, Ryan. That was pretty awesome to kind of see both the web interface as well as how to interact with that data via R code. And a reminder that all of the code, and I think we'll get sort of the presentation documents from all the leaders as well, is going to be up on that GitHub repo that we sent out before it, and we'll share again with you at some point throughout today. Also a reminder to be checking the poll everywhere, both to submit questions as well as to kind of upvote any that you also find interesting.